Now, the point of this panel is that ONR does not accomplish this mission alone. We are part of a much larger science, technology, and engineering community. And so we're here to talk about where we, the panelists, see technology headed in the future and how we work together to get there. Now, I am really delighted to have this panel here because on our panel today, there are three of my friends and colleagues who are either now or in the recent past have held these kind of positions. On our panelists, we have someone who's been president of a major research university, head of Army Science and Technology, engineer at a major defense contractor, directorate chief at NASA, deputy program officer for an Army acquisition program, group leader at the Department of Energy laboratory, head of all U.S. defense science and technology, head of the National Science Foundation, NASA chief scientist, executive director for a major technical society, chair of the Smithsonian Board of Regents, and oh yeah, an astronaut. And three people. Thanks for joining us. That's pretty impressive. With only three people, that's efficiency that you gotta love. So let me very briefly introduce our panelists, and each of them will share some initial thoughts on the current state and future of U.S. science and technology. And so we are honored to welcome Ms. Mary Miller. She is currently the Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. She is responsible for strategies and supporting plans to ensure continued U.S. technological superiority. Mary oversees matters from basic science to capability prototyping to research and engineering at the 63 Department of Defense laboratories. Second, Dr. Franz Córdova, the 14th Director of the National Science Foundation, and our neighbor in Arlington, at least for a few more weeks. We will miss you. Sorry about that. NSF is the only government agency charged with advancing all fields of science, innovation, and technology, and they lead the nation's STEM education efforts as well. And finally, who could forget to introduce Dr. Sandra Magnus, the Executive Director currently of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, AIAA, and she's the astronaut, by the way. As an astronaut, Dr. Magnus has flown multiple space missions, including 4.5 months aboard the International Space Station. So with that, each of you please make some opening remarks. Ms. Miller, to you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jones, for asking me to be part of this panel. It is actually a great pleasure to be here with two colleagues that have such esteemed criteria in their background, and actually to tie together the work that we do in the Defense Department with the National Science Foundation, which does outreach in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics and fundamental science, and our AIAA representative and astronaut, who clearly ties us well to industry and what we are doing. I am here to provide you some perspective on the current state of play for the Department of Defense. The U.S. military has long relied on its technical people and high-quality people to maintain technical superiority and our organizational constructs and unmatched ability to fight as a joint force to make sure that we have dominance. In the last 16 plus years, our adversaries have watched us quite closely. They have learned our tactics, our techniques, our procedures, our concepts of operations. They have figured out how to exploit our weaknesses and find ways to not run up against our strengths. Our near-peer adversaries are investing in research and development at a rate that is much faster than the U.S., and this causes us great concern. Nations like Russia and China are investing heavily in research, trying to close these technology gaps with the United States. We see high-end military technology that has been proliferated to countries that, left to their own devices, would never be able to access this for decades, and yet it is moving quite fastly into their hands. To address this issue, this concern that we have of maintaining technical superiority, we must plan ahead and prepare for what might come in 10, 20, 30, and beyond years. We must identify areas and invest in innovative ways to preserve and advance our national security into the 21st century. We must know how to deal with these challenges across all domains, air, land, sea, but also cyber, electronic warfare, and space, where our reliance on technology has given us great strength and opportunity, but also introduces vulnerabilities that adversaries are eager to exploit. The Navy's 30-year research and development plan recently published is an essential tool to help us focus attention on those necessary long-term investments that will ensure that we retain technical superiority and dominance on the battlefield. Too often all of us, tend to focus on our near-term problems, figuring that we have time to get to those ones further down the road. But those of us that have worked long in the science and technology realm understand that creating new capability takes time. To come up with new ways of doing things takes time to think about it and pursue it. We can't develop a railgun or a high-energy laser without years of fundamental research, starting with foundational science, going through component development, to prototyping, and eventual fielding to our warfighter. In a culture whose attention span is fleeting, it takes a strong will to stay steadfast in the face of that next bright, shiny object. Long-range plans help the department to do this. They can provide that stable underpinning of a strategy and still allow for the introduction of new capabilities and technologies as they become available. However, technology has gone global and is moving at an unprecedented pace. Planning and U.S. ingenuity are not enough to ensure technical superiority. Collaborating with industry, academia, and our allies is essential. We must leverage the best ideas from wherever we can find them. Speed has become the discriminator. Speed in development, speed in delivering capabilities to the warfighter. The DoD is not particularly noted for being speedy, something that we are working on to improve, and we see the formation of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering as a great avenue to try to inject new ways of doing business. We are addressing the erosion of our technological superiority by identifying and investing in innovative technologies and processes to sustain and advance America's military. We are pushing the envelope with innovative and cutting-edge research reflected in our department-wide science and technology investments. But beyond technical innovation, we are pursuing new practices and organizational structures to address threats in order to ensure future U.S. technical dominance. With changing competition, we opened ourselves to engage with the intel community to better understand the red capabilities, what our adversaries can do, and their projected plans for the future. We looked at how the red capability would stack up against our existing blue capabilities. And where we found shortfalls, we assessed technology trajectories and identified areas that we thought could make a difference. These areas represent a set of capabilities to operate at range, penetrate threats, utilize autonomy, and change the cost paradigm to our enemy. For example, we need to find inexpensive ways to require the enemy to respond, ideally making it cost prohibitive for them to engage us. Frankly, to use some of the tactics they've been using against us. Instead of launching high-end missiles against cheap UAVs, perhaps we should consider things like directed energy to take those UAVs out. Instead of sending in a single high-value target to prosecute a mission, perhaps we use many inexpensive systems like swarming UAVs to do the same task. And in fact, this is a recurring theme, to disaggregate our capability and give more targets to the enemy. It may be using cheaper, lesser capabilities that require the adversary to respond. We are, however, forced to stay vigilant in our efforts from basic research to advanced capability. The DoD enterprise provides technological foundations that ensure our military of the future remain the most capable in the world. The areas that we are particularly interested in partnering with industry, academia, and our partners include new forms of distributed maneuver, combined effects of kinetic, electronic warfare, and cyber capabilities, leveraging autonomy and artificial intelligence to get inside of our adversaries' decision cycles, to greatly expand our manned and unmanned combat, to extend our attack surfaces, and to re-amplify our guided munitions advantage with raid-breaking capabilities. We can create new mass by this disaggregation concept and create a complex target set for our adversary. This is how we believe we will take advantage of our technical capabilities. We must pursue cross-service research to increase the use of prototyping and experimentation to better understand what technology can do and how it would be used in an operational environment. We have embraced the concept of open systems architecture as we develop systems going forward, because that gives us the ability to upgrade our systems based on threats that we see or technology advancements. And we must remove barriers to leveraging commercial technology. It sounds easy, it's not. And we need to figure out how to do this and do this well. We are outreaching to our global markets to leverage wherever we can what is out there. And we are stressing the development of strong internal and external partnerships. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that much of this relies on the people and the workforce that we have within the Department of Defense S&T enterprise, and in fact, the nation's enterprise in the STEM fields. We recognize that we need increasing numbers of scientists and engineers to not only pursue military defense, but also the good of the nation. And the Department of Defense has taken a strong role in trying to advocate and provide opportunities for our STEM workforce. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you today.
Thanks, Ms. Miller. Dr. Córdova, please.
Great. Thank you very much, Walter, for your introduction, and good morning, everyone. Thank you to Admiral Hahn for the invitation to be here and for organizing this event. I enjoyed meeting with Admiral Hahn in my office a few months ago and having the opportunity to discuss NSF, ONR, and our shared priorities. It's a pleasure to be here at the Office of Naval Research's Science and Technology Expo and be a part of this distinguished panel. NSF and ONR share in history working for the promotion of science and technology. In fact, our very first director was Alan Waterman, the chief scientist at ONR. We got started about 4 years after ONR started, that is for NSF in 1950. So he was our first director. In fact, his desk is still in my office. And ONR's role as a government grant-making agency and its working relationship with the civilian science community provided NSF with some very useful models to adopt in its founding years. I really liked the slides that Admiral Hahn just showed a few minutes ago about the origins of ONR and its purpose, because that was the same origins as the National Science Foundation. Our guiding light, our spiritual founder was Vannevar Bush, who was involved in all of this during World War II and really recognized the importance of the scientists and engineers who came to contribute to winning the war and wanted to keep up that participation for peacetime purposes. Organizations like ONR and its Naval Research Laboratory do security-related research, often with an eye towards specific applications. This research always rests on a foundation of basic research, and this foundation is why our relationship at NSF with ONR is so very important, because we are a basic research agency. NSF's mission to fund high-risk, long-term, curiosity-driven research serves as an important asset for national security, laying the groundwork for later applications. Our funding has led to the development of more efficient bulletproof vests for troops and led to the discovery of polymers that help medics minimize blood loss when treating traumatic wounds. We've funded studies that help us understand the mentality of violent extremists and developed research models that help predict international conflict that may lead to war. We supported research that created a brain-computer interface that can control robotic prosthetic limbs and develop software that helps veterans with PTSD and depression successfully transition back into civilian life. The impact of NSF's mission extends far beyond national security. Today, NSF is the only federal agency that funds fundamental science over every field of science and engineering. That includes geoscience, computer science, biology, social, behavioral, economic science, engineering, and all the physical sciences, including material sciences, astronomy, physics, chemistry, and mathematics. These investments also bolster our economy, improve our health, and solidify our international standing. This slide is NSF by the numbers, shows our current budget. It also shows how lean we are as an agency. 93% of what we have appropriated from Congress goes right out the door, much of it to universities and colleges around the nation, and a portion of it to small businesses that are very innovative. It's exciting to imagine where science and technology will be in the next 50 years, and I know that's one of the themes of this panel, and what types of government-funded innovations will be discovered. In fact, it was with an eye toward the future that NSF came up with about a year ago what we call 10 big ideas for future investment. Now, I'm not going to take you through all 10 of these, but I am going to say that these ideas confront compelling challenges like the warming Arctic and the evolution of organism phenotype. We aim to learn more about the cosmos, learning novel particle, electromagnetic, and gravitational wave facilities. In fact, this is the first time in the history of the planet that we're able to observe the universe in all three modes, especially now with the success of our gravitational wave detections of binary black holes far out in space. Further research into robotics and artificial intelligence create anticipation about shaping the innovative future of the human technology frontier. So we have efforts on anticipating the future of work and how we'll collaborate with, not fight with, robots, and really use artificial intelligence to better society. We also envision making transformative discoveries by mining big data and leading the next quantum revolution using the more exotic properties of quantum mechanics. These ideas also reflect NSF's belief that how we do research is just as important as what we research, whether through the convergence of disparate disciplines to solve unanswered scientific questions or changing how we fund research projects. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about how we could change up our processes to be more efficient, effective, deliver more with less money. Our big ideas include strengthening and diversifying the composition of the science and engineering workforce that we'll depend on for future innovation. This is the theme that Mary Miller brought up in her remarks. One of NSF's priorities is to make science more inclusive, and in today's increasingly STEM-dependent workplace, inclusiveness is a necessity. An example I want to mention is women's participation in STEM. We can point to some notable improvements over the past couple of decades, but we can also point to areas still in need of considerable change. For instance, women's participation continues to trail well behind that of men at all degree levels and in all fields of engineering. NSF-funded research suggests steps to counteract this imbalance and retain women in STEM fields. For example, curriculum designed to provide prominent examples of female scientists and engineers, whether it's the 19th century mathematician Ada Lovelace, or NASA physicist and Hidden Figures inspiration Katherine Johnson, or maybe more modern-day role models like the women on this stage, have revealed positive effects on women in STEM courses. Whatever the transformation that will happen in the next 50 years, whatever that will look like, one certainty is that we don't know where the next groundbreaking discovery will come from. We continue to be surprised well, and we don't know who will make it. So it's essential for our nation to develop talent in every segment of society. That's why at NSF we have many initiatives to broaden participation in science and engineering. Our mission to fund basic research has yielded significant breakthroughs with tremendous impact, and it's our goal to be a generator of major innovations and support the innovators who will define our future. And we hope to continue to do that in partnership with ONR, with NASA, and the other agencies engaged in science and engineering. Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Okay.
just have, if you could
Dr.
put my-
Magnus, over to you.
Yes, excellent. And if you could put my slides up. Yeah, I'll just use so the problem with going last is all of the good points are already made. But I think what I'm going to try and do is put a little bit of a different twist on what Mary and Francie talked about, because I think their points are certainly comprehensive with what we need to worry about. When I was thinking about the trajectory, we were asked to speculate on where's technology going in 20 years, 50 years, what kind of research will be funding 50 years from now. It was really kind of difficult to speculate, but I think the one thing that I've learned over the course of my career is that the shortest distance between 2 points is not a straight line. So however we're going to get there, it will be very interesting trajectory, which provides lots of places to learn. And I think that's where the real learning goes on, is when you end up taking a path that you didn't quite anticipate. And if you project out 50 years, I think the first thing you have to do is look back to 50 years ago and where we were and how we got to where the trajectory that brought us to where we were today. We had a lot of very strong funding in research, basic research and development, that allowed us to get to the point where we are today, where we're reaping the benefit of that. Basic research, as you mentioned, over at the NSF and the great work that's done there, and of course at the Navy and in the DoD. And this has been very important. And one of the issues that we're facing now is the fact that the R&D funding keeps getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And it's really of a concern to all of us, as expressed earlier. And it's something that I think all of us, no matter what our particular role is in the industry, has a responsibility to continue to bring that to the attention of the world around you, whether that's the people that you work with, but more importantly out into the general public, writing letters to your members of Congress, and bringing this. We have to continually work on the awareness of the importance of strengthening our research and development funding, so that the technologies that we're going to speculate that are going to be here 50 years from now have a strong base from which to draw upon. So this is, I think, something that we all need to maintain vigilance on. As you look at what's been happening for the last 50 years in order to extrapolate out the next 50 years, one thing that is really obvious is how much all of the engineering disciplines that started out very siloed, the science disciplines that started out very siloed, they're all merging together, and you have to be pretty adept at having cross-disciplinary conversations, whether you're a scientist talking to other scientists, or engineers talking to other engineers, or scientists talking to engineers, and including and then scientists and engineers talking to the operations community. And continuing to strengthen those cross-disciplinary conversations and those cross-disciplinary interactions will allow us to take advantage of the innovation and the creative spirit that lies at the heart of our culture, which I think, Mary, to your point, you talked a lot about the people, and all of those challenges are going to be met, not necessarily because of the technologies we're developing, but because innate in our culture is the fact that we have this diverse set of people with a diverse set of experiences, with a diverse set of approaches to problems, and the more we can enhance communication across these communities, the more we spark that creativity. And that, I think, is as important as what is the technologies. How can we foster those kinds of environments to bring that creativity out, to create those technologies? If you were sitting in this room 50 years ago and speculating on the kind of technology that we have today, I think very few of us would have been able to predict the types of capabilities that we have, in our smartphones and our cars and our, you pick a technology that it's incredible to think about where we are today. When you speculate what's going to happen in 50 years, clearly we know autonomy is going to be of interest. I personally think sensor technology is going to be key in understanding how to use autonomy and develop that. It's something I noticed when I lived on the space station, how behind we are on just sensors, and if going beyond low Earth orbit, we definitely need to have better systems. There's a lot of interesting technology that's happening, though, in the intersection of the physical sciences and the life sciences. And the implications of that are pretty profound, and I think we're going to see that play out in the next few decades, and that has multiple questions around it. But where that's going is going to be really, really difficult to predict. And when you bring in some of the quantum technology being developed, some of the nanotechnology being developed, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what 50 years is going to look like, but it's going to be way different than what we can imagine. But you'll all be a part of bringing that to fruition. I think we'll continue to explore. It's kind of funny. I spent some time in space. I also spent some time underwater in the Aquarius Habitat off of Key Largo. There's a lot we don't know about our own planet, and you guys, of course, are the Navy, and you spend a lot of time dealing with the oceans. But I think if anybody any group of people on the planet has knowledge of the oceans, it's you, and I think you're well aware of how much more we have to do there. And there'll be a lot of technologies developed for that. But really, when it comes right down to it, the key is the people that are engaging in the technology. The key is this community, the rest of the research and development community. And I think the one skill set that's really going to be required is you have to get yourself into this constant learning mode, because there's going to be, because of the rapid pace, Mary, that you mentioned of change, there's going to be this need to constantly have to learn. And that was actually one of the fun things about being an astronaut. I was constantly having to learn new things. And I think fostering environments like that and encouraging that kind of behavior and engaging in your passion for learning, that will be what makes you successful. That will be what allows us to enable these technologies to come to fruition. The world is moving very fast. It's only going to move faster. And that passion for learning and that ability to learn, the ability to stop when you're doing something and say, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I've always done it this way, or am I doing this process, or am I approaching this problem because it's automatic pilot, or am I approaching it because I'm really thinking mindfully about what I'm doing? So these are the skill sets that are going to bring the technology to fruition. It's very exciting. We have a lot of capabilities. There's a lot of opportunities out there. And we have a lot of creative people in this room in our community that can get us there. So I'm very excited about the next 50 years, but I'm not going to make any more predictions. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.